Let's just go ahead and forget everything Hollywood has taught you about Luciferianism. Seriously, toss it right out. Today we're diving into this explainer to objectively unpack a highly, and I mean highly, misunderstood philosophical framework. We're looking directly at the SC Europe 2022 edition of a text called Apotheosis, written by Michael W. Ford. Instead of relying on pop culture, horror movies, or just, wild assumptions, we are going straight to the source material to see what it actually says. To keep things objective and on track, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll be shattering the myth. Second, we'll explore the left-hand path. Third, igniting the black flame. Fourth, the Luciferian mindset. And finally, the points of power. All right, let's jump right in. Starting off with Section 1, Shattering the Myth, Expectations versus Reality. Let's address the elephant in the room and look at how this philosophy actually introduces itself to beginners, because it is a massive departure from what you'd probably expect. So what exactly is Luciferianism? When you hear that word, your brain probably jumps straight to spooky rituals, malevolent entities, dark magic, or just a total chaotic rejection of all societal rules, right? The media has definitely painted a very specific, sensationalized picture for us over the decades. But right out of the gate, the source text aggressively shatters that expectation on the very first few pages. Get this. In an incredible twist of irony, instead of telling you to go perform dark rituals out in the woods somewhere, the text literally begins with a strict mandate. It tells readers to seek professional medical help if they're struggling. It specifically highlights calling 112, that's the European emergency number, if you feel unwell or depressed. The author explicitly states that this path requires a really strong mind, and if you feel hurt or threatened, this book is going to be of absolutely no help to you. It's kind of funny when you compare it to the public perception, but it proves that we're dealing with a system demanding intense psychological discipline and baseline mental stability. It is absolutely not a recipe for chaos. And that brings us to the foundational document for our explainer today, the SC Europe 2022 edition of Apotheosis. Now, this specific edition was actually edited and prepared for the first global interreligious convention for the left-hand paths over in Lecco, Italy. It completely frames the philosophy as a rigorous guide to self-excellence and extreme accountability. It's not about worshiping a literal devil or getting caught up in superstition, not at all. Instead, it's presented purely as an intellectual framework for your own personal evolution. Moving on to Section 2, the left-hand path, the Great Divide. Let's look at how this all builds on the fundamental divide between traditional religions and this specific philosophy. So, the crucial point here is this very clear dichotomy laid out in the text. Traditional religions, which the book refers to as the right-hand path, often focus on dualism, good versus evil. They generally encourage surrendering yourself to a higher power, with the ultimate goal of merging with an objective universe or a rewarding creator. But the left-hand path? It goes in the exact opposite direction. It is entirely defined by preserving, enhancing, and strengthening your own individualistic existence. It's all about taking solitary responsibility for your own subjective universe. Think about how terrifying, yet absolutely liberating that concept is. You aren't looking up at the sky hoping to escape this world or waiting around for divine intervention. You are seeking to master yourself right here, right now, within the reality you actually live in. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Igniting the Black Flame, the core framework. Having established that intense, individualistic foundation, the text introduces the actual frameworks practitioners use to transform their lives. According to the book, practitioners do not seek out an external light. Unlike looking to a guru, a spiritual guide, or a divine savior for all the answers, individuals are expected to look entirely inward to ignite what's called the black flame. Now hold on, we aren't talking about literal fire or magic here. The black flame is purely a metaphor. It represents rational intelligence, wisdom, and that questioning spark of human consciousness. It's basically the internal drive that pushes a person towards self-liberation. It constantly asks you to evaluate why you do the things you do. The text organizes the ignition of this flame into a highly structured three-step cycle known as the triad of the morning star. Step 1 is liberation. This is where a person identifies and actively breaks restrictive old habits. Imagine realizing you have a tendency to self-sabotage at work or maybe in your relationships. Well, liberation is the active unlearning of that exact reflex. Step 2 is illumination. That's where you experience the joy, the insight, and the sudden clarity of building new, self-determined habits that actually serve you. And then step 3 is apotheosis, the ultimate goal. This is where you achieve a balanced unity of mind, body, and spirit based on those newly forged habits. And then the cycle just repeats itself as you find new limitations to conquer. It is a continuous, strategic engine of self-improvement. Let's look at section 4, the Luciferian mindset, traits of the practitioner. To actually achieve that triad we just talked about, the text outlines some very specific behavioral and personality requirements. Far from being chaotic, a practitioner is expected to embody 10 highly disciplined traits. Look at these carefully because they seriously contradict the public myth. Yes, they're expected to be mavericks who question everything, but they also must be rational and strategic, carefully calculating their actions before they even speak. Crucially, though, the text demands they be non-dogmatic and tolerant. That means actively striving to understand different perspectives and absolutely not attacking other religions or beliefs. They also have to be emotionally controlled. Wasting time on hateful thoughts or holding on to grudges, that's seen as a major failure of discipline. The focus is turned entirely inward toward conquering personal obstacles with total balance. The absolute core of this mindset, and honestly probably the most demanding aspect of the entire text, is radical self-accountability. As the book explicitly states, you are the god of your world. You cannot blame your failures on external forces, bad luck, or even a string of terrible relationships. The text literally notes that you cannot allow the indulgence of drama. This is the ultimate double-edged sword, right? Total freedom paired with total blame. You are completely isolated in your accountability. You get 100% of the credit for your successes, but you also take 100% of the responsibility for your mistakes. That brings us to section 5, the points of power, rules of the road. These are the operational rules that govern this intense self-accountability on a daily basis. The 11 points of power demand that followers act with intellect and indulge in life's pleasures, but specifically with restraint and discipline. You've got to master the darkness within rather than just repressing it. But a truly fascinating point the author makes here is about human nature and our social brain. The text argues that even altruism, helping others, is at its very core a selfish act. Why? Because when you help the people around you, you are actively building a healthier, more stable, and much more supportive environment for yourself to live in. The text advises practitioners to just accept this selfish reality without any guilt and use it to make strategic decisions that benefit their community. Because lifting up your environment lifts you up too. The author does note, however, that implementing these rigorous mindset changes isn't a walk in the park. It takes about 25 days of stubborn daily practice to break an old habit and establish a brand new one. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought, inspired by the text's ultimate demand for radical, solitary responsibility. If you were entirely stripped of all external forces to blame for your life, if you could no longer blame society, your past, or just plain bad luck for your current subjective universe, how would you navigate your choices today? It's a demanding, incredibly rigorous framework of self-evolution that is drastically different from the myths that surround it. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the pages of Apotheosis. Keep questioning, keep learning, and as always, keep looking closely at the source material.